Welcome to Meet Your Mentor. I am Jack Scott, your host and the Chief Operations Officer of the Mentor Project. For the next few minutes, you will have the opportunity to meet one of our mentors. Our mentors are world-renowned experts in their field. In these next few minutes, you will gain insights into their backgrounds as they share their personal journey to include their successes and failures. They will talk about some of the best and worst career advice they have ever received and communicate in their own words what it means to be a mentor. So without further ado, let's get to it. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I am Jack Scott, and I am so excited about our guest. His name is William Cheswick, but he typically will go by Bill or Ches. Ches logged into his first computer in 1938 and has pretty much been programming ever since.
58.
He joined, 1958. Oh my gosh. He joined the ARPANET and then Bell Labs in the 80s. You look great for your age, Ches.
Yeah.
He also co-created and patented the first DNS proxy and co-authored the book Firewalls and Internet Security, Repelling the Wily Hacker. He has worked on corporate and internet mapping that still appears in publications and talks today. He has earned more than a dozen patents in visualization and authentication. Ches attempts to convince everyone since 2012 that he is retired, yet he still teaches. He's obviously mentoring at the Mentor Project, which is allowing me to have this great opportunity to interview him. So Ches, I am so happy to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm delighted. I'm doing fine.
This is so awesome. How is the weather where you're at? You have a farm, right?
Disappointing 8 inches of snow, and now it's 10 degrees out. And, so it's 4 seasons, and I'm enjoying them.
I love this. So we have so much to talk about because you are a wealth of knowledge. I don't even know how you're going to be able to do this, but I would like you in a few sentences, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your career and how you got to where you're at today.
Okay. Sort of the elevator pitch. I'm a science guy. I was in second grade when Sputnik went up and the country said, oh my God, we got to learn science. And I was totally on board. By fourth grade, a couple of years later, I had a chemistry set. By sixth grade, I was doing chemistry in the home that alarmed future professors. And my parents were oblivious. They were not scientists. And I've been a science guy ever since. I read science and nature, read everything, cosmology, oncology, medicine, virology, a lot of that right now. I read the hard papers and try to understand what's going on. And also, it turns out I have a knack for teaching people what I've learned. So that's something. Went to Lehigh, was a so-so student, but did other stuff there. I did some consulting, and then I went to Bell Labs because I decided I'd be an IT guy for the gods there. And within a couple of years, I was doing work that was new. I tried writing a paper like all those PhDs, and my boss looked at it and said, this is pretty good. And I submitted it to a conference, and they accepted it. And so I've slid into sort of research and invention and consulting. In 1993, I mentioned to Steve Bellovin, a friend of mine, that, the world really needs a book on firewalls and we should staple some papers together. And he went to a publisher who had been bugging him for 10 years. And the publisher said, no, you don't get to staple papers together. You have to write it. It's sort of like, congratulations, you have 15 English themes due. And I was never really great on English themes. But we co-wrote it, came out in 94, ended up being the first book on firewalls. Sold 100,000 copies in 11 languages. Wow. We get an envelope in the mail and they say, ooh, a new language, and try to guess what it was. Is it Czech or something? Really, I think of all the things I've done, that is probably the most important because it basically taught the first generation of internet security people. And I had amazing people giving presentations 10, 15 years later. I said, oh, you know your stuff. And they said, you got me into the business with your book. So that's pretty cool. I think an important point for the kids that internet security expert was not a job that existed if you had asked me when I was 10 what I wanted to be when I grew up. All I knew was that I liked technical stuff and I wanted to play with science and engineering and so on, and sort of followed, oh, that looks interesting, down the line of things. I did the internet mapping, founded a startup, which is an interesting research result to have the stuff you worked on become a product and be useful. That company's still around 20 years later. I'm kind of proud of that. And so I retired, as you pointed out, in 2012, I guess. And I've been sitting here on a farm. And one day, Debbie Heiser came by, and she's all into mentoring. And we talked about it. And I said, I'm really good at teaching kids science and stuff. It's a waste for me not to do some of that in my retirement. So she hooked me up with a couple of schools. And I've been in, and they've had Ches days in 4th grade. And I try to teach them things like chirality, that's handedness, or what does sound look like, or math without numbers, because there's an awful lot of math after you get past arithmetic, which, of course, 4th grade is full of memorizing tables. So I've had a variety of these things. I guess the other thing is that in the late 80s, the Liberty Science Center came to Bell Labs, and Gerard Holtzman, who had been doing programming to change pictures. Basically, he was doing Photoshop 5 years before there was Photoshop, maybe more than 5 years. And Liberty Science Center asked him, could you make an exhibit for our new science center in Liberty Island? And he came to me because I know how to work with, standalone computers and such. And we built an exhibit, and it was very popular. And 10 years later, I said, I can do all those transforms on video now because the CPUs are faster, and put that into Liberty Science Center. I don't know if that exhibit's still there, but I'm spending my retirement working on a free app to bring all that stuff forward. So it's sort of like Photoshop, but you can add things to it, which means you get a level of creativity that's fun. And I guess the ultimate fun is I was trying to design the user interface, which are really hard. And I have a 2-year-old granddaughter who's cuter than anybody you know. And we started playing with it, and I decided I had to change the UI that would work for a 2-year-old. And it turns out that extending that a little bit really made the user interface that I'm working on now that it will be good for grown-ups too.
That's awesome.
So that's what I'm doing these days, and chatting with people like you.
I love this. Yes. So you said a lot of rewarding things when you were talking, like the book, especially the firewall, and building that, creating that content before it was even a thing. But from your own mouth, what was the most rewarding thing within your field to date that you've experienced personally?
Well, I don't know if it is so helpful if you want to be on the edge of science, to be on the leading edge and to be out there with all the other people doing new stuff, sitting down and looking at the first picture of the internet that anyone had ever done and realizing there's no one else in the world who's seen that. I've heard scientists say, and then I suddenly realized this, and no one has known that before. And I think that moment was pretty important. It's important for me to point out, I did not invent the firewall. I did a little bit around the edges. I wrote the book on it, but there were dozens of people who'd worked on it before and since. I didn't invent it. Though when you use the word proxy, I think that was from my book, from my first paper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
I did my research on you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're a mentor, you're a teacher. You work at the Mentor, you volunteer, you're on our board here at the Mentor Project. What does it mean to be a mentor at the Mentor Project and working with the children and teaching them STEAM?
Oh, well, it's terrific. I love kids. I love teaching kids. And of course, I actually went into schools and did this until COVID came along. I don't get to do this as much anymore. And it's important, one of the great benefits to this amazing life I've had is that I have an astonishing collection of friends. People who've done all sorts of stuff, people you could sit down for a couple hours with and just ask questions. Mm-hmm. For example, I have people from the Air Force. I'd like to do that with a couple hours. Intelligence officers. What could you tell me? Mm-hmm. Those 2 hours with Mary Cleave, one of the first astronauts, are amazing. And what I learned is over the years, I go to conferences, and I want to get back to that in a moment. I go to conferences and I meet friends and I see them each year. For example, at Renaissance Weekend, I've been friends with Bill Phillips, a Nobel Prize winner in physics. if you've got a Nobel Prize winner in physics as a friend, you can save up your physics questions through the year and sort of dump them on it at the end of the year. And I realized I've done this for a bunch of people. I have several lists, though I'm not traveling anymore. And I think for the kids in school, you could do the sort of things I do on YouTube, but actually showing up once a month means they get to know Ches. They can ask questions from before, they get comfortable. It doesn't scale very well, but I think it's a better experience. And so that is what the Mentor Project originally meant to me. Now, I can't even keep track of all the mentors and all the stuff that's going on. This is really snowballed. But I'm happy.
Over 70 mentors now. It's crazy. Yeah.
It's amazing. And, we just ended up helping a bunch of students in Argentina. Who knew?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Such a good point. So this is going to be a challenge for you, Chaz, but in one word, how would you explain what a mentor is in one single word?
Teacher. Sorry, it's not very deep or complicated, but you limited me to one word. I think because there's a back and forth, a question and answer. You're not just listening to someone, you're asking questions. I love it when someone says, that's a great question. No one's asked me that before.
Yep.
And every once in a while, now that I've sort of hung out with some of the leaders in the fields, occasionally my question is, ooh, that might be a new idea. And those moments, you have to spend a lot of time in the field to get to those. Those moments are magical. And you get that with kids too. Maybe if I can put A and B together, I can invent something new. That's how inventing works.
I love that. That is a very good point. I love when people stump me and vice versa on questions and thought. It's a thought process, and it's, engaging the mind in a way that maybe hadn't been engaged before that conversation. I love that. So you're a mentor at the Mentor Project. You're a very good teacher. For those that are listening right now and could be interested in joining your field or maybe wanting to learn more about it, could you provide maybe a little bit of insight for them on how to get more involved in this field, in this industry? What did you do? What would be the best first step?
Okay, I have a great answer for you. I give this to teenagers every year when I'm allowed to go to school and talk to them. If you're interested in the field, even as you're just a student in college, find out where the leaders of your field are meeting in the technical meetings and go to those meetings. Pay some of your college funds, ask mom and dad if they can afford it, go to Portland, Oregon, or wherever it is, pay the $2,000, although there'll be student deal, fly there. Obviously can't do this in COVID, but these things are online, but it's not the same. Go there and listen to what the leaders in your field are talking about. Hang out with them. When the keynote speaker is out in the hall after the talk and is going to go to lunch with a couple organizers, try to be in that crowd. They usually love to have young kids. They hear what you have to say. You can learn what's important. And heck, they may say, oh, this was that sharp kid I met in Portland. Let's bring him on as an intern. And this really is what got me into Bell Labs, was hanging out at computer conferences, occasionally hanging with the gods of the field and learning what was going on and what they were thinking, and figuring out what's really going on at the edge of things. I think that is a really important point. And if you're getting your first job in a technical field, you sit down, you talk about your salary and vacation days and what you're going to do. And one of the things you should do is say, okay, 1 week a year, this is part of my job. You're going to send me off to this conference. You're going to pay for it. You're not going to whine that I have things due that week. And you're going to let me go because this is for personal growth and I need this. And
I love that. That's such a good point. Yeah.
So that is my advice, and that works for internet security or any other place. The other piece of advice I have is if you're going to meet someone who's famous or important or in your field, a speaker, a professor, even your doctor, go Google them and see what they've done. I have one doctor, I went and looked her up, and we ended up, at my last meeting, aside from the checkup, discussing her grad school and PhD work. Find out, you'll learn questions. You'll learn what they're good at, what's interesting. You can think of good questions to ask.
I love it. So Ches, through your life, you've experienced a lot. You've done a lot of things. And I am curious, what is some terrible advice that you received in your life, and why? What happened?
I had no trouble answering that question. There was a fellow, I had been a technical person at a consulting firm for about 9 years, getting high marks, lots of salary increases. The customers loved me and so on. And a manager came to me and said, your future is sort of limited because you're in the tech track. You really need to go into management.
Wow.
7 months later, I was working at Bell Labs. 7 years later, I wrote a book. I'm hanging out with people. That was just really bad advice, at least for me. And there are technical people who are great at management. I haven't really tried my hand at it very much, and I'd probably be okay, but I like the technical problems more.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for our listeners is, advice. Trust the source who's giving you the advice, and we have a wealth of knowledge. Google, friends, LinkedIn, research, and ask people. And trust your gut. So that was the worst. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, this brings me to the other question. How does your career get guided? How do you end up where you go? Because I was not going to be a computer's internet security expert, graybeard. I was going to be a chemist. And what happened is when I got to college as a chem major, I realized I was spending all my time in the computing center and none of my time in the lab, though we had a great lab. And I said, I must be trying to tell myself something, and switch majors. In fact, earlier back in high school, I was going to be a chemist, and in the math department, they got a teletype in the corner. And I said, computers are the wave of the future. I should learn a little more about them. That was 50 years ago. I've been programming ever since. So listening to yourself of what is it that I really like to do and make it useful. Also, where do I like to live? This is part of your college and living choice. Do you want to be in a city, in the country, foreign country? Do you want to travel? Do you want to spend time in front of a screen? Do you want to teach? Teaching is hard work. You're standing all day. And if you're teaching third graders, you go home. I don't know how they do it. I think they have to go into a quiet room and turn on some Enya or Bach and have some white wine. It's hard work. Actually, giving talks, I've given talks as long as 90 minutes or more, and that can be exhausting, but it's really worth it. So it helps to listen to yourself, find out what you're good at, work on what you good at. The knowledge comes eventually. There you go. There's some advice.
I love that, Ches. Well, we're coming close to the end of time, but before we hop off, I want to know, what is your favorite quote?
Well,
do you have a favorite quote?
Yeah, you asked me, and I gave a couple of flip answers. What did I say? Brute force if brute force doesn't work, use more. And another one: buy low, sell high. If it don't go up, don't buy it. But I don't know if I have a particular quote I keep in mind. There's some yucks and stuff like that. There probably are some that bop around in my head that just don't leap to mind at the moment.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I like the brute force. That's perfect.
Yeah.
So for all our listeners that want to reach out to you and ask questions or even have you as a mentor, what is the best way for them to reach you?
Well, if you can remember my last name, Cheswick, I've been on the internet since the land rush for domain names back in the early 90s. So Cheswick.com is out there. And it really, if you can't find me given the name Cheswick.com, I probably don't want to talk to you anyway, because you're just not trying hard enough. There's a domain out there. I've got web pages. You can send me email. I do answer email, Ches@Cheswick.com. The web pages are easy to find. You can look up my name. I've got lots of stuff all over the internet. I have lots of talks that I've given over the years that are online as well. If you want to, hear my, that won't work. There's a space in the username, and I have Ches@Cheswick.com.
Yes, Cheswick. See, I thought I was getting clever here.
Here
we go.
You can do Cheswick.com, BC@Cheswick.com. I mean, I own the domain. I run the mailer, so it can be, it could be jpierpont_flathead@Cheswick.com if I wanted. There you go. That one will work. And I answer email.
Thank you, Ches. You're awesome. We will have to do this again. Have a great rest of your day.
A pleasure, Jax. Thanks.
Thank you to all our listeners and sponsors who have made this podcast possible. You can check out all our content by going to our website at mentorproject.org. We'd love for you to contact us to get more involved. See you next week when we talk with another one of our amazing mentors.